Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling when a massive construction project is finally nearing its end?
Oh, yeah, that collective sigh of relief you can almost hear.
Exactly. The owner's practically counting down the seconds until they can stop those progress payments, right?
Definitely. And the contractor is already picturing the final check, ready to roll their equipment to the next job.
It feels like the grand finale, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But even when it looks like the last brick is laid, there's still a fascinating and, well, crucial series of steps to go.
Absolutely. What might seem like the end is really a carefully choreographed transition. Some very specific and, frankly, vital phases still remain.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're going behind the barricades into those final acts: construction closeout and occupancy.
Our aim is to really illuminate what these phases entail, why they hold such significance, and, the distinct roles that everyone involved plays.
We want to cut through any potential confusion, basically, and offer you a real understanding of this pivotal part of the construction journey.
Whether you're maybe about to embark on a building project yourself, or you're just sort of intrigued by how a structure goes from concept to completion, understanding these final stages is key.
Definitely. We're going to cover everything from the very last bits of physical work, including that infamous punch list, all the way through getting the legal all clear to move in.
And what happens with the contract and the contractor once the site quiets down?
So we'll break it down into a few key areas.
Yeah, first, construction closeout. That covers the physical completion, getting the certificate of occupancy, contractor leaving the site, all that stuff.
The end contract closeout.
Right. Focusing on fulfilling all the contractual obligations, getting that final payment, very important.
And finally, occupancy itself. The moment the owner takes possession and actually starts using the building.
Yep, that's the plan.
Okay, so let's dive into the beginning of the end, starting with construction closeout. The very first order of business is wrapping up all the physical work.
And that's where the legendary punch list makes its grand appearance.
Ah, yes, the punch list. Everyone's heard of it, but what exactly is it?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the punch list, usually compiled by the contractor superintendent as things wind down, is essentially a detailed checklist, but only for minor tweaks and fixes.
Minor being the key word there.
Absolutely. Think of it as the final polish before unveiling the finished product. We're talking about things like ensuring that front walkway is spotless and welcoming,
Okay.
installing those last switch plate covers that seem to always go missing, maybe giving the tile grout a final scrub,
Little things?
or even making sure that construction dumpster is finally hauled away. These are those last-minute details, things that might have been unintentionally missed or just weren't quite finalized.
Right. But it's crucial to understand the scope, you said. So what is not a punch list item?
Good question. We're definitely not talking about installing an entire new window, for example, or putting in all the major plumbing fixtures.
Because those should have been done way earlier.
Exactly. Those are substantial elements of the project. Punch list items are minor in nature, and importantly, they shouldn't prevent the owner from being able to actually use the building.
Okay, so they don't stop occupancy?
Generally, no. They are more about those final cosmetic and functional details that are usually addressed before the contractor receives that final payment.
And who actually puts this list together? Is it just the contractor?
Well, the contractor superintendent usually takes the lead in creating and managing the list, and the general contractor ultimately gives their sign-off. But the architect and their team of consultants also have a chance.
Oh, so they review it too.
Yeah, after their final inspections, they can add items they spot. It's a pretty collaborative effort, usually.
Okay. And here's a tricky question. What if something that should have been done isn't on the punch list? Is the contractor off the hook?
Oh, no. And this is where it gets really interesting. Even if a required piece of work somehow doesn't make its way onto the punch list, the contractor isn't automatically relieved of that responsibility. Yeah. The AIA general conditions, those are standard contracts used a lot in the industry, setting out everyone's roles.
Right, the standard farms.
They clearly state that the obligation to complete all work according to the contract documents remains. Full stop.
So even if it's missed on the list?
If something incomplete or defective is discovered even after the formal closeout, the contractor is still on the hook to fix it during what's known as the correction period.
Okay, the correction period. We'll definitely circle back to that. So the punch list handles the final minor details.
Yeah.
But when does the project reach a stage where it's considered, mostly finished?
That brings us to the concept of substantial completion. This is a really pivotal milestone.
And how is that marked? Is there paperwork?
Yes. It's formally recognized by the architect issuing a certificate of substantial completion. Now, it's important not to confuse this with the certificate of occupancy.
Okay, different certificates.
Very different. The CO, as we'll discuss, comes from the local authorities, having jurisdiction the AHJ. Think building department, fire marshal. For the contractor at this stage, though, that substantial completion certificate often carries more immediate weight.
So what exactly does substantial completion signify? It implies it's not necessarily 100% perfect, but...
Precisely. Substantial completion means the work is sufficiently complete for the owner to occupy or otherwise use the building for its intended purpose.
Its intended purpose.
Okay.
It's that point of practical completion, even if there are still those minor punch list items needing attention. Think of it like this. The building is functional and safe to use as designed, even if, the final cosmetic details aren't all buttoned up yet.
Okay, that makes sense. And why is reaching substantial completion such a big deal? What changes?
For a number of key reasons. Firstly, just as the notice to proceed marks the official start of the construction timeline,
Right.
substantial completion marks its end. This is the point at which the clock stops on any potential liquidated damages if the project ran late.
So if the contract had penalties for delays, those stop accruing at substantial completion. For instance, if the contract specified a 180-day construction period, that period officially concludes when the certificate of substantial completion is issued.
That's a big weight off the contractor's shoulders, avoiding those penalties. What else happens?
Secondly, and this is huge, at this juncture, the responsibility for the physical property essentially transfers from the contractor to the owner. Meaning things like insurance coverage, site security, routine maintenance, even paying for utilities like electricity and water. The owner effectively takes possession and control.
Wow, okay. So the owner begins to shoulder the risks and responsibilities of actually owning and operating the building.
Exactly. And thirdly, substantial completion marks the commencement of both the contractor's correction period,
Which you mentioned earlier?
and the various warranties associated with the project. Now, it's important we clarify the difference between these two. They're often confused, but they serve different purposes.
Yes, please do. Warranties and correction periods. They sound pretty similar on the surface.
They are related but distinct. A warranty is essentially a formal promise from the contractor, maybe manufacturers, that the materials, equipment, systems, workmanship all meet the standards set out in the contract and are free from defects.
And that lasts for a while.
Potentially a long while. A claim under a warranty could happen years after the project is finished. Imagine if, say, 5 years later, a pipe specified to be stainless steel turns out to be galvanized and starts leaking badly. That's a warranty issue, a failure to meet contract terms.
Okay.
And warranties aren't always written down explicitly. Things like the quality of workmanship often carry implied warranties by law.
So a warranty provides longer-term protection against failures or defects not meeting the contract. What about the correction period then? How's that different?
The correction period is a specific time frame after substantial completion. Often it's 1 year during which the contractor is contractually obligated to come back and fix any work found not to meet the contract documents.
So it's like a 1-year guarantee on the work itself being done correctly.
Sort of. Without this specific clause, if the owner found something wrong, they typically have to prove a breach of contract or warranty failure to force the contractor to fix it at their cost. The correction period gives the owner a more direct and immediate path to get incorrect work fixed within that first year.
That really clarifies the difference. Thanks.
Yeah.
And what happens financially at substantial completion? I remember reading about something called retainage.
Yes, retainage. Good point. This is a percentage of the contract price, maybe 5 or 10% that the owner typically holds back from each payment throughout the project.
Kind of like insurance for the owner.
Exactly. It provides leverage to ensure completion. Upon reaching substantial completion, and often with the okay from the surety that's the bonding company, if there is
A
one.
guarantor.
Right. The owner will usually release most of that held retainage to the contractor. However, they often still hold back a smaller amount, maybe double the estimated value of the remaining punch list work, just to ensure those final items get done.
Okay.
And sometimes, subcontractors, especially those whose work finished early, might get some of their retainage released even before substantial completion, depending on their contracts.
Okay, so we've got the physical work wrapping up, the punch list for details, substantial completion, shifting responsibility, and releasing funds. Now, what about all the guts of the building? The systems,
Absolutely critical. This is where systems testing comes in. All the mechanical and electrical equipment, HVAC, plumbing, fire alarms, elevators, electrical panels, everything needs to be systematically started up and rigorously tested.
To make sure it actually works as designed.
Precisely, to verify it's operating correctly and meets the design specs. This process usually involves people from the equipment manufacturers, the subs who installed it, the GC overseeing it all, and the architect and their engineers observing.
And the owner's people, too.
Often, yes, the owner's facility management team might be there to learn the systems.
And I imagine this is more involved than just flipping a switch.
Oh, definitely. And this leads us naturally to the concept of commissioning, which is an even more comprehensive process.
Commissioning. Okay, how's that different from just testing?
While systems testing often focuses on individual pieces of equipment working correctly, commissioning takes a more holistic view. It looks at the functionality of the entire building as a cohesive system.
The whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
ASHRA, that's a big industry organization for heating, cooling, etc., defines it as a quality-focused process for enhancing the delivery of a project. It's about systematically checking and documenting that all the key systems and assemblies are planned, designed, installed, tested, operated, and maintained to meet the owner's specific goals.
So it's a much broader look at how everything works together to meet the owner's needs and performance targets.
Precisely. And while we often talk about it during closeout, ideally, commissioning starts way back in the design phase. It continues through construction, closeout, and even into the building's operational life.
Really? Even after it's occupied?
Yes, good commissioning includes setting up preventative maintenance plans and ensuring proper operational training. Often there's a dedicated commissioning agent involved throughout.
What are the benefits of doing all that? Seems like a lot of effort.
The benefits are significant. Fewer problems right after move-in, potential long-term cost savings, especially through energy efficiency studies show commissioned buildings can use 10–15% less energy.
Wow.
Plus, you get greater assurance the building performs as expected. And it's often required for green building certifications like LEED or for government projects. It's really an investment in the building's long-term health and efficiency.
It sounds like a really smart, forward-thinking approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so the building is substantially complete, systems tested, maybe even commissioned. Can the owner just move everyone in now?
Almost. This is where that other certificate comes in, the Certificate of Occupancy.
Ah, the CO, the one from the AHJ, the authorities.
You got it. While substantial completion means the building can be used functionally, the CO, issued by the local building and fire departments, legally permits people to actually occupy it. It's the official green light.
So how do you get the CO? More inspections.
Yep. Typically, after substantial completion, the contractor or architect requests a final inspection from the AHJ. The inspectors come out, check everything against the approved plans and building codes, safety systems, exits, accessibility, everything.
And if it all checks out.
If they're satisfied that all the relevant codes and regulations are met and all the various required sign-offs are in place, they issue the CO. It basically certifies the building meets safety standards and is legal to occupy.
And I assume the specific requirements can vary a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Varies by city, county, state, and also depends on the type of building. Hospital requirements are way different than an office building, for instance. But fundamentally, the CO confirms substantial compliance with the plans that were approved before construction started with the building permit.
So it really brings everything full circle back to that initial permit.
Exactly.
Are there ever situations where you don't get a full CO right away?
Yes, definitely. You might get a partial CO, say if a big project is phased, you could occupy the first finished wing while work continues elsewhere.
Okay.
Or you might get a temporary certificate of occupancy, a TCO. That can happen if there are minor outstanding items that don't affect safety, maybe final landscaping isn't done, or some minor exterior painting. The TCO lets people move in while those last bits are finished.
Gotcha. So the TCO is the official go-ahead to move in. While all this is happening, what's the contractor doing physically on site? Are they packing up?
Pretty much. That leads us to demobilization and final cleaning. As construction wraps up, the contractors systematically move their operation off-site.
What does that involve?
Closing down their temporary site office, removing the job trailers, hauling away leftover materials in dumpsters, getting temporary utilities disconnected, taking down temporary fences and signs.
Cleaning up their footprint?
Yeah, exactly. And crucially, they're also responsible for a final, thorough cleaning, both the exterior site area and the interior of the building, making it ready for the owner.
So they hand over a clean, ready-to-use building.
That's the goal. But even with the physical work done and the site cleared, the contractor isn't quite finished yet. There are still contractual obligations before they get that final payment.
Right, which brings us to the next phase. Contract closeout.
Exactly. Construction closeout was about the physical building being ready. Contract closeout is about tying up all the administrative and financial loose ends of the actual construction agreement.
Makes sense.
The project specifications, part of the contract, usually detail exactly what's required here. The contractor's project manager typically drives this process.
And what does it usually involve?
Generally, two main parts: submitting all the required contract documents and then applying for the final payment.
Okay, let's talk documents first. What kind of things are we talking about? They're not for the building department this time, right?
Correct. These are primarily for the owner's use for operating the building, future maintenance, renovations, that sort of thing. And they're usually reviewed and approved by the architect.
Like what?
Well, a big one is record documents, often called as-built drawings.
As-builts. What are those exactly?
They're basically the original construction drawings that the contractor has carefully marked up during the project. They show any changes made in the field, the exact locations of things now hidden in walls or underground, like pipes, conduits, utility lines, or any adjustments to dimensions.
So they show what was actually built, not just what was planned.
Precisely. And you can see why they'd be incredibly valuable later, right? You don't want to start drilling into a wall without knowing what's back there.
Definitely not. Okay, what else?
Another vital set is the operations and maintenance manuals, O&M manuals.
The instruction books for the building.
Pretty much. These give the owner or their facility team all the info needed to operate and maintain everything: materials, finishes, equipment, systems.
It's typically in them.
Product data sheets, recommended maintenance schedules, repair procedures, cleaning instructions, everything. They're critical for budgeting maintenance and making sure it's done right to make things last.
And sometimes training, too.
Yes, for complex systems, the contract might require the contractor to provide hands-on training for the owner's staff.
Like getting the owner's manual plus a lesson for the whole building.
Exactly. Then there are also requirements for spare parts, extra materials, and keys.
Spares, like extra tiles.
Yeah, extra tiles, maybe some carpet, paint for touch-ups, especially for finishes where matching later might be tough. Also things like special fasteners or tools needed for certain equipment.
And keys, obviously.
Right. Construction often uses temporary locks, so the permanent locks need to be installed or rekeyed, and a full set of organized keys turned over to the owner.
Sounds like a lot of practical stuff the owner needs. You mentioned other documents, too, legal or financial ones.
Yes, really important ones. Linen releases are key.
Linen releases. What do?
They're signed documents from the general contractor, all their subcontractors, and major suppliers confirming they've been paid for their work and materials on the project. They release any right they might have had to put a lien on the property for non-payment.
So it protects the owner from future claims.
Exactly. And also, all the manufacturers and subcontractors' warranties for their products and work get compiled and submitted. These usually get attached to the final payment request.
Okay, so once all those documents are gathered, the as-builts, O&M manuals, spares, keys, warranties, lien releases, then the contractor asks for the final payment.
That's the process. Once the punch list is done and all these submittals are complete and approved, the GC submits their final application for payment.
Using the same form as the monthly payments.
Usually, yes. Their project manager double-checks everything internally first.
And those lien releases are especially important here.
Absolutely. Throughout the project, the owner probably got conditional releases with each payment saying, if you pay me this month, I release my rights for this work. But for the final payment, the owner needs unconditional lien releases from everyone. These basically say, I have been paid in full, I have no more claims, I release all my lien rights. It's final confirmation.
And if there was a bond?
The surety company usually has to provide their consent too, saying they agree to the final payment being released.
So it's a very buttoned-up process legally. And the architect reviews this final payment request too.
Yes, just like the monthly ones. The architect reviews it, certifies that everything's complete according to the contract, and forwards it to the owner for payment.
And that payment includes the rest of the retainage?
Typically, yes. The final bit that was held back. Once that final payment is made, well, the contract is essentially executed. Done. Finished. Except, of course, for any future warranty obligations.
That must be a huge moment for everyone involved.
Yeah.
A real sense of completion.
Definitely. A collective sigh of relief, as you said earlier. But wait, there's one more closeout.
Oh.
The contractor's internal closeout.
Ah, okay. What's that about? The owner isn't involved.
Nope, this is purely for the contractor. It's basically their own post-project review, like a post-mortem.
What do they look at?
They'll discuss what went well, what didn't, challenges faced, how subs performed. They update their estimating data, their scheduling info, learn lessons for the next job.
And measure success.
Absolutely. Did they meet the owner's goals? Cost, quality, time, satisfaction? And did they meet their own goals, like hitting their profit target? It's crucial for their business improvement.
So a vital step for them, even if the owner doesn't see it. Okay, so we've covered physical completion, paperwork, payments, internal reviews. Finally, we get to the whole point, right? Occupancy.
Yes, the big milestone. The owner finally takes possession, moves in, starts using the building for real.
And just to be clear, the certificate of occupancy is the key that unlocks this.
It's the legal key, yes. Once the AHJ issues the CO, the facility is legally ready and safe for users. Though sometimes the AHJ might have a few extra operational requirements before day one, like maybe specific emergency signage that wasn't strictly in the construction contract.
Little details. And by this point, the owner is already responsible for a lot, correct?
That's right, worth repeating. Since substantial completion, the owner's been responsible for maintenance, utilities, security, insurance, liability.
They're fully in the driver's seat.
Pretty much. And on larger projects, you'll have a facility manager or similar role who's been getting involved.
What have they been doing during closeout?
Participating in systems testing, maybe getting trained on equipment, receiving all those O&M manuals, and as builds we talked about, understanding the warranties, figuring out operating costs, starting long-term planning. They become the owner's expert on running the building.
So they hit the ground running once occupancy starts.
That's the idea. And at this point, apart from maybe dealing with a warranty issue down the line, the project is truly, finally complete, from that first idea to people actually using the space.
Wow. It's quite a journey from start to finish. So many steps, especially in this final phase that maybe people don't think about as much.
It's definitely intricate.
So just to recap quickly, we looked at construction, close out the physical work, punch lists, that critical substantial completion milestone, systems checks, and the all-important certificate of occupancy.
Then contract close out all the paperwork, the O&M manuals as built, warranties, lien releases, and finally getting that final payment process.
Plus the contractor's internal wrap-up. And we highlighted how responsibility shifts to the owner and how crucial that CO is for actual legal occupancy.
And understanding these processes, even just basically, gives you a much clearer picture of how these complex projects actually wrap up successfully, involving the owner, contractor, architect, and authorities all working together.
Absolutely. It demystifies that final stretch. And on that note, here's maybe a final thought for you, our listeners, to ponder.
Okay.
Consider the long-term ripple effects of this closeout process. How does being really thorough and detail-oriented right here at the very end impact how that building works and lasts for years, even decades to come?
That's a great point. What unseen efforts during this phase, getting those O&M manuals right, ensuring warranties are clear, maybe doing thorough commissioning, truly lay the groundwork for the building's entire future life cycle?
Something to think about. The foundation for the future might just be laid in these final steps.